As an urban planning exercise, pupils from Coleridge Community College in Cambridge suggest ways they would redevelop their local airfield, Marshalls Airport.
In the centre of the development, a general sort of transport station.
A leisure centre with bowling, swimming pool.
All of the houses can have their own personality because we don't want the houses to just be the same.
Massive underground car park.
This work was undertaken as part of the Where Will I Live project. Set up by the Geographical Association and Commission for Architecture and the Built Environment. The scheme provided these pupils with the opportunity to study citizenship skills and geography side by side. Through it, they learned about their local environment, housing markets and sustainable communities, and gained knowledge to better equip them for future life choices.
It'd be educational, but they wouldn't be in school, would they?
What you need to do, gents, is to make sure...
Their geography teacher, David Beresford, was part of the project's development team. He shares how he put the scheme into practice and how it can be utilised in the future.
What we've really been trying to do in the Where Will I Live project is to encourage pupils to imagine better communities for themselves, better communities for them to live in, better communities that are actually sustainable. We're getting them to use their imaginations to take a look at what their futures might be. Through this project, the students will learn a great deal about the changing population of the United Kingdom and also the area in which they live. I think they'll be brought to realise that population is a constantly changing thing, and where people live is constantly changing. That actually people create the environments in which they live, and that they as decision makers are going to be creating the new environments of the future. As youngsters who will be entering the housing market maybe in 5 or 10 years' time, I think it's important that they realise how that housing market works. So they'll learn such things as how mortgages are worked out, how a housing association works, how councils allocate houses to different groups of people. So there's a lot of citizenship in it as well as geography. And we hope that by them learning these things that they'll become able to operate themselves better within the housing market, that they'll understand it and will know how that the market works to their best advantage. There are different housing types, so we've got to consider flats, terraced houses, semi-detached houses, detached houses, all of which have got different values. Let's take a look at those different values. The average flat would cost you about £186,000. That might be a flat with just a single bedroom. One of the things we've really tried to encourage in the Where Will I Live project is a questioning attitude amongst our students. Questions about where they live, questions about why is it like this, questions about does it have to be like this, can we change it, a questioning of their own attitudes as well, to try to build a better world for themselves. What sort of questions do we need to ask, what sort of questions do we need to apply our intelligence to in order to produce a better, more sustainable living environment, and to seek as many answers to these questions as they possibly can through their own devices.
The Where Will I Live project offered the opportunity for David to take his pupils out of the classroom in order to study the structure of their local environment and how it served them.
Site that you're on. Until just a few years ago, this was largely an open space with a few old, in some cases derelict buildings, which were associated with the cattle market. Look round at the buildings that you can see immediately around you and further away. Put your hand up, somebody. One building you've observed that's obviously very different.
Cinema.
Cinema, Alice, yes indeed, multi-screen cinema, isn't it? What other buildings do you observe?
Nightclub.
Nightclubs, another one.
Restaurant.
Restaurants, indeed, yes. What other buildings can you see here, particularly through the gap there? Offices, indeed, yes. Still not occupied, they're still advertising there that these are offices to let. They've had difficulty in filling those. We introduced a card sorting activity. This was an attempt to personalise the issue. I always feel that that geography can become more understandable to the students if they can put themselves in other people's shoes.
I think this one goes with this one because it's got 6 bedrooms and they've got 5 children and one of the children is disabled, so they'll need like extra room because they have different needs.
So we would have single people in different circumstances, we would have couples, we would have families with 1 child, 3 children, 5 children, at different salary levels, so that they would have access to different types of housing. We introduced as well more topical aspects. For example, we built in a family of asylum seekers where they would fit into the scheme of things. We wanted the students to make the match between the housing types and the family types and justify exactly why they made that junction between the two.
The 4-bedroom city centre, semi-detached, for the 2 doctors in their late 60s.
Retirement house.
How many rooms it got?
4.
I think the students learned quite a lot about how the world operates and how different people are affected within the housing market. And they also raised issues about the fairness of the housing market. It really didn't seem fair in some ways that some people could quite seemingly easily afford houses over £1 million in value, whereas other groups of people could barely afford to buy the cheapest housing on the market. The world out there is a real place, that it's not necessarily a fair place, but they have a part to play in it really, and trying to make it a better place, that if they really do think it's unfair, then it's up to them as the future decision makers to really work at these aspects of our society, to decide, you know, this is unfair, let's make it a better place, to make their voices heard, to attend meetings, to find out about the issues of development in the city. And when they're able to vote on those issues, both in local elections and also in national elections, that they can have a voice. Now, what we got the students to do is to try to link together a number of different concepts. They'd already worked through an exercise where they realised there were a whole lot of interrelated things that had to be taken into account in developing a new community. They realised that it wasn't just housing, that there were many, many issues that had to be taken into account.
We need to join up population and transport, because the more of the population there is, the more public services we need.
So as they made the link, they would have to actually explain what the link was that they were making. And it was quite interesting that they built up a very complex pattern on many of these concept maps. And I think that they really began to see and understand the very complex interrelationship of these different ideas and all these different things that go to make up a good, effective, working and sustainable community, that it wasn't simply a matter of just building some houses to put people in. Oh, interesting pattern, right.
I wonder what the definition of
Sustainability is where you make use of a resource, but you leave it in sufficiently good condition that future generations can use it. So maybe if you regard it as an environmental sort of thing, you're trying to create an environment that's going to be there for future generations, that's not going to be destroyed by whatever development you choose to go ahead with. If they develop a settlement for themselves now, it should remain a good settlement in 25 years' time or 50 years' time and still be seen to be a great place to live in 100 years' time. We chose the Marshalls Airfield site for the students to look at. We gave them base maps of the site, and we told them within the boundaries of the roads that surrounded Marshalls Airport, they had free range to create any sort of sustainable community that they thought would really work for people.
In the centre of the development, we decided
Once the pupils had completed their urban redevelopment exercise of Marshalls Airfield, they were given the opportunity to present their plans to some professionals, namely David Lambert from the Geographical Association and Ben Korolek from SHAPE, Cambridge.
Houses mixed up with each other, or are they in different bits? So you said this was the semi-detached.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is provide pupils with a way to see geography as relevant to their current lives and their future lives. Think about the importance of place, think about the significance of scale, and above all, to think about the importance of interconnectedness. all in the context of pupils learning things that are relevant to their current and future lives.
Yeah. This is all these light yellow bits are to do with housing.
Yeah.
Got 60% of terraced and flats, 30% of semi-detached, and 10 for residential or special needs.
This little one there is like a doctor's and a dentist, and there's like a road there so people can get to it really easily.
There's a lot of really good ideas in there. I think it's brilliant the way you've thought it through, trying to mix all the access with transport, and you're thinking about having a bus station as part of the development. It looks to me like a sort of old European medieval walled city almost, where it's got a very strong... It was fantastic to see the students work today. They'd really got their heads around some of the major concepts of this new development. And clearly where they can go from here is to have a more meaningful engagement, a dialogue with planners, developers, architects, house builders, about the change that's happening on their doorstep.
For these youngsters actually to get very positive feedback about their ideas, to give their ideas some kudos, was very, very important to them. They weren't just producing any old school project or just doing any old bit of work, but they were doing something that really mattered, that they could see a point to, that was relevant in their lives. And I believe that the feedback that they got actually made them perceive this work to be important and relevant, and I'm sure that they will remember what they've done in years to come.
David worked closely with fellow geography teachers in the development of the project and describes how it can be of use to others.
I think it's a useful source for the geography teacher, or will be a useful resource for the geography teacher, because it will provide them with a number of templates perhaps that they can use in their own planning. We're not setting out to produce materials that you can just take down off the shelf and use immediately, but more materials that you can look at and you can think to yourself, yes, I like the ideas, I can use those ideas, I can adapt them to my own situation in the town where I live and work, and make them more meaningful to the students in that town. Another one of the projects looks at the relationship between environmental quality and house prices. How it can be that a very, very similar house in one area could perhaps be worth £250,000, and yet why 2 miles away, more or less the same house is worth only £40,000. Geography is one of those subjects that can really bring it home to them, how this world is changing and the part that they've got to play in it.
I've learnt that 4 million new houses need to be built in the UK because people from the northern area are migrating down to here, which means that we're going to have to build 12,000 new houses.
I learned that we need to provide houses for all different generations, the old, the young, adults.
I've learned about how expensive it is if you want to move into a house straight away, so I think I might stay with my parents a bit longer.
I really enjoyed the planning of the Marshalls Airport. I like the ideas, and I think we've made a good impression for the professionals.
I've learned that a community needs to be based on what everybody likes, not just one generation. And everybody needs to care for others. You can't just think about yourself.